right, guys, welcome back to the Mako Performance Podcast, where we talk about how to train smarter, work harder, and perform better. In our last episode, we talked about how to build your base in strength and aerobic conditioning, and leading into the post-open in the class specifically, we're going to talk about what the program is going to look like and how we're actually going to attack a lot of this base building inside the class, what you can expect to see from a weekly programming standpoint, and also maybe some things you could do outside of training to, prepare yourself and get the most out of this block. So first, Aaron, let's talk about how long this block is, what events we have coming up.
Yeah, so post open. So guys, just kind of where we're at right now. It's week 2 of the open. That announcement is today. So we have 2 weeks left of the open. This cycle will start that following week. So starting March 6th, and it will run for 12 weeks all the way through that first week of June. So 12-week long cycle, that is what we're looking at. And that's really gonna take us and prepare us for kind of a couple things that are come up in that time frame. We've got beach brawl, which is kind of like midway point of the cycle. End of March, and then really towards the end of the cycle, Murph.
Yeah, so Murph is what we're going to be our next big event, something that we do every year right around Memorial Day. Those of you guys that do not know what Murph is, it is that 1 mile run buy-in, and then essentially you have 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 squats, followed by another mile run. On the high level of like guys that are really trying to focus on doing this RX, it's with the weight vest, there's no partitioning. But for most people that are gonna do this, it is gonna be about breaking up those sets of 100, 200, and 300. So that could be 10 rounds where you're essentially just going through those movements. That is a way to accomplish this. If you've never done it before, that's essentially how we try to really push you guys to do it, trying to keep it at like an hour-long cap. And those of you guys that have done it, we try to just progress you a little bit further or get better at whatever version you've done before. Preparing for this workout specifically, we are going to really focus on running, obviously, and building the muscular endurance of the pulling and pressing and even air squats to ensure that you guys have a successful event. And that test of fitness in the CrossFit sphere, it is like the gold standard aerobic CrossFit test. And so that's a great thing to really think about focusing on after we come out of this high intensity cycle, which is the open.
Yeah, go back to the conversation last episode about building your base. This is kind of our base phase, for the year, more or less. Coming out of the competitive season, more of that base building. So just objectives, guys, we are going to continue to push strength. So we are going to have a big lower body kind of base strength phase with squatting going on. Brandon already talked about just building the aerobic base for running specifically, knowing that we've got to work out with 2 miles of running in it, and then body weight movements. So just looking at our efficiency there.
Yeah. Additional events, right? We do have the Emerald Coast Throwdown that will be coming at the tail end of this in June, and also it's typically beach season. So this is where aesthetics kind of come into play. And so in this block, we are going to take on those things as well, making sure that if you are planning on competing in like a team event, we'll try to make sure Saturdays kind of focus on honing those skills, very team oriented, and even like CrossFit style team competition stuff so you can prepare for those events. And then, for the aesthetic side, that'll not only help us with the muscular endurance, but making sure that we're hitting the arms, the backs, the legs, and things like that. So to get into this, guys, we're going to go ahead and start out talking about the strength and how you can what you can kind of expect. So let's start out, Aaron. Let's talk about the upper body strength portion of this. What is that going to look like?
Yeah. So, from a strength standpoint, really looking at just like pushing heavy pulling movements. So that's, think like bent over rows, pin lay rows, and then obviously, things like strict pull-ups.
Yeah, strict pull-ups, strict dips, strict gymnastics. Those of you guys that are in, the way you can look at this is like when we think about how do we build strength, we're looking at that 1 rep being max effort, but all the way up to 8 reps. So if you're in the strict dip range and 6 to 8 is really a tough rep range for you, you're building upper body strength with that movement. So those of you guys that can do strict dips or even box dips that are elevated that make it really tough, or weighted dips. So you're going to have plenty of options when it comes to the strict dips and how to kind of attack those to work on building the pressing strength and kind of doing it more of a gymnastic movement perspective, opposed to always hammering the pressing of the barbell, which we do a lot of. So we're not going to see a ton of overhead pressing with the barbell in this cycle. We'll see it in like the metcons and the conditioning and some accessory work, but for the most part, we want to really try to hammer 12 weeks of base pressing strength.
Yeah, and I think just for, the class, like, he just listed a ton of options for, take the dip, for example, right? It's, do we have to add band? Do we have to, go body weight? Can we add weight, right? So there's kind of like 3 categories that you might fall into. Knowing where you are and making sure that, when we're prescribing like specific rep ranges, that there's a purpose for that, and just, adjusting to make sure that you're getting the right stimulus on the day, specifically with the gymnastics work.
Yeah, it'll be written in the notes. The coaches will know what to look for. The coaches will know what to kind of focus on when, preparing you guys for that day. And just another note on that, we are trying to find individual levels each day for people in the class, okay? And we'll have a whole episode at some point talking about how you can get the most out of class as far as like understanding that modifications and scaling is actually super important. And if I could do that with every single person in the class, I would. And if they ask me to, I will. And that's how we all look at it. We really want to try to make these workouts as personal as possible. That's the whole point of it. I mean, we know personal training can be very expensive, and what we try to do with the class is we try to cut that cost of personal training and getting a personal experience in the group setting. So keep that in mind, guys. Do not hesitate to ask us for help and ask for modifications. Personally, that's my favorite time, and my favorite classes is when I have everybody sort of doing something different, but also hitting the same stimulus of what the goal is for the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so when we look at the lower body focus of strength work, when we talk about maximal strength and the heavy stuff that we're going to be doing, we are going to be doing something a little bit different and unique. Aaron, tell them about what we're going to how we're going to progress the squatting specifically.
Yeah, I think for some of us that have maybe done a considerable amount of strength work, maybe not like such a novel thing, but for those of you guys in the class, like it's definitely something that we haven't done in the class, or if we have, it hasn't been for a very long time. So starting at the beginning of the next block, we are going to be doing some box squatting. So the box squat, really good for just learning how to really move through the range of motion. You can really challenge your depth in different ways, make sure that you're hitting depth, but more so from just like an absolute strength standpoint, when we can get to the box and rest and take away that stretch snorting cycle or that bounce that you feel on the bottom of a squat. That's really where you get a totally different adaptation from that, from a strength standpoint.
Yes, thinking about this is really focusing on the posterior chain, right? The glutes, the hamstrings, the lower back. The box squat is the best thing to do as far as developing that in a safe way and allowing you guys to push load in the back squat. It's going to feel kind of awkward for some of you guys that are very quad dominant, and that's okay, because you should get immediate like progress out of this by learning how to box squat and training it. And I will even say, those of you that sometimes get like an achy knee here or there, there's no reason to train through it. I 100% only squat heavy on a box now, okay? And people can say what they want about that, but really, like, my goal is health and longevity, and I have a knee that causes me issues, and there's no reason for me to grind through reps when I'm not trying to compete in something that needs a full depth squat, and I'm just trying to be stronger, build muscle, and feel good. So I always limit my depth when it comes to heavy squatting, and then or not necessarily my depth, just like literally just sitting on the box and not using that bottom and that turnaround point at the bottom. But then I push all my lighter stuff without a box. So I'm hitting full range of motion throughout the squat progressions that I hit, but I am only focusing on that heavy load being box squat, and that's what keeps me safe, keeps me feeling good. And the goal for everybody should always be able to train tomorrow. If you're so wrecked and beat up, or you're always letting your joints have to like recover, we need to change how you're training, how you're viewing training, and the box squat is going to be one of those tools that you're going to have at your disposal after this whole block as well.
Yeah, so that short cycle, and it is going to be a fairly short cycle. Of the 12 weeks, it's really just going to make up the first third of it, and then we go back to squatting how we normally do without a box to depth, but starting off with like some tempo stuff. So really just again, continue to ingrain the motor pattern, increasing our time under tension, and making some like moderate weights more challenging without having to actually load from an absolute load standpoint. That's kind of the benefit of the tempo there. And then going into really prepping for a 1 rep max after that big base in our last 4 weeks, where it's going to be a lot of like practice with singles and building the intensity back up, and eventually leading to hopefully us smashing some 1 rep max back squats.
Yeah, guys, think like 4 weeks at a time, 4 weeks of box, 4 weeks of tempo, 4 weeks of regular squats without the box, pushing to that new max. And that's what we're going to be hoping to do, is be hitting those PRs. The other part of the lower body cycle that we're focusing, because we're going to be focusing so much of our upper body on gymnastics and muscular endurance gymnastics and like hypertrophy work, we want to think about having another dedicated day to lower body. And this day actually will help you with running and help you with like building power, and that's what we're looking at doing. So Aaron, tell us about what they can expect from that like power plyometric day.
Yeah, so again, kind of another layer that, in the kind of like sports performance world that we see a lot of, and like I've programmed for specific athletes in the barbell clubs at time when we're doing like power specific cycles, and then letting that now kind of fall into the class. So we are going to be focused on building, explosive power, and we're going to do clean pulls paired with plyometric movements. So think, early on it's going to be light deadlifts, moving really fast, 2 or 3 deadlifts, and then immediately going to tall box jumps, and going right from something wakes your nervous system up, you're moving, you're primed, and then you get to be really springy and explosive right afterwards. So kind of pairing those two movements together, like very power driven workout. And then, as we progress, we just add layers into it. So it's, deadlift, box jump to start, then it's, clean pull plus, a seated box jump. We're just changing the variation as we're moving, making things more complex, making the jumps higher, making it a rebound off the floor, and just, adding those little layers and complexity into it.
Yeah, it's the contrast method. It's not necessarily max strength, and so a lot of times the contrast method is really heavy with plyometrics. We're going to kind of play on this being a little bit more in the speed zone, even with the barbell and also with the plyometrics, because we don't have a huge plyometric base with this. I know we do box jumps, and we'll even maybe do some jump overs, but with this is what we're really looking for, is like getting you guys to really move as fast as you can. And those of you guys in the aging population, this is a great way to like help keep and maintain and even get some of that elasticity back, that you kind of lose that pep in your step and that speed. I personally pushed a big block of plyometrics, and like used all my speed work was body weight, and I saw a huge difference in like how well when I go to running specific, how much faster my turnover started getting and how springy my legs started being. And that's what we're going to be looking at to try to build. So if you guys are ever out there and you're running and you just feel like your legs are just kind of sluggish and moving, these plyometrics and this speed work will help you build the power and speed, to improve that.
Yeah, and it's doing that by developing, really strong and robust tendons and ligaments, at the joint, where we can, use that stored kinetic energy that you find in a tendon and ligament to propel us forward. So when that foot hits the ground, there's that immediate feedback and spring back off, which is going to allow you to be more efficient when you're running or jumping or, producing power in a Olympic lift. So it's all the same.
Yeah, it'll do that. And like you said, like building that ligament tendon strength, like we're looking at that even being something that will help you prevent injuries when you guys are going out to play, kickball or it always happens like outside the gym, playing a pickup game of soccer or football or whatever. This is like, we're going to try to start getting you guys doing some more athletic stuff inside the class, so you could have that athletic carryover to whatever you're doing outside, pickleball, whatever. Okay, when we look at the conditioning specific, we've already kind of been playing around with this like one day that ends up being like starting around on the 5 minutes. It's run, it's maybe jump or double unders or toes to the bar, and then it's like some mover or some movement that we think that we can just move through, like a D-ball over shoulder or a box step up, and then starting another round. We are going to continue that stuff. We don't consider that day a high intensity day. We look at that as being like a moderate intensity day for most people. You could push it at a lower intensity. But we do want to look at like how often we're hitting that high intensity. So early on, our back squats won't necessarily be high intensity, because we're going to be working on like building power and speed off the box. so we can push a high intensity CrossFit day, right? So if we think about that CrossFit day, when you guys go back to that base building video and we talk about that pyramid and hitting that top of that pyramid is like zone 5 heart rate or like max effort heart rate, we need to make sure that we're recovering from that. And our goal is to do those once every 72 hours. So what that looks like is you can see that high intensity, like hard, really hard effort should be done like 1, 2, maybe 3 days a week, but like realistically for you personally, it should be 2 days a week max, based on how it flows. We know Thursdays are typically that lower intensity base building where we're gonna try to push a little more running. But thinking about it is like there's going to be 2 days, 1 to 2 days where it's going to be high intensity. So if your training looks like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you're probably going to hit at least one high intensity day in those days. But if you come all 5 days in a row, you'll definitely hit 2. On top of that Murph specific training, we'll probably be hitting the benchmark Cindy at some point, like playing around with versions of Cindy. And Cindy is that 20-minute AMRAP of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats. You'll see versions of that. It might be paired with a deadlift. It could be paired with box jumps. It could be paired with all kinds of stuff just to like get that volume in and keep you guys moving. But look for that movement specifically to be thrown in, or that pairing to be thrown in pretty regularly as we're preparing for Murph. That's pretty much it on conditioning. Usually conditioning, when you look at it too, is like it's how we kind of fill the gaps in the program. We try not to, we write all these very linear strength progressions, and that's great. A lot of times though, you can run yourself into a biased program. So we look at filling the gaps with all that conditioning and like CrossFit style workouts. Accessory work, Aaron, what do we got?
Yeah, so we talked about kind of this being a very body weight focused, gymnastics focused piece. So I think just like from a skill work, from an accessory standpoint, I expect to see a lot of positional work for gymnastic stuff. So I think that's going to be hollow holds, plank holds, support holds on the rings, anything that re-emphasizes just like basic gymnastics positions. From a lower body standpoint, anytime we're doing like really heavy squatting or not even high intensity, but just like high volume, high frequency squatting, you always want to balance out with some type of unilateral work. So, a lot of different just body weight, single leg variations, lunges, skater squats, box step ups. That's always there to balance out the squatting that we're doing. Take us off of 2 legs, get us onto 1. And then with beach season, just upper body hypertrophy.
Yeah, hypertrophy all around, and hitting that repetition method as well. There's a lot of people that told me that Spanish squats really helped them out, especially when it came to the front squats we just did. They came out of that big base of Spanish squats consistently as the accessory work. So we'll look at trying to do something similar to this to kind of really to keep things in that frontal plane in our accessory work, because we're going to be doing that back squat pretty consistently. But yeah, arm farm is going to be going down. We're going to be doing bicep curls. We're going to be doing tricep extensions. And anyone who says that biceps curls are not functional, I do believe they help you with pull-ups and building up just upper body pulling in general. We do them correctly. There is a carryover there. It is an isolated movement, but there's carryover. So I think you can make any movement can be functional, but also sometimes you just want to have bigger arms and leaner arms and more toned arms. And so with that, we're going to be doing some curls. We're going to be doing some triceps, some diamond push-ups, some different push-up variations that we can push there as well.
Yeah, who doesn't like to get pumped?
Yeah, it's a big pump. Yeah, big pump. So let's try to think. Did we miss anything when it comes to going over the block?
I think that gives a pretty good overview of the block, but maybe go back and just reiterate just how people should just be approaching a block and setting goals for themselves within a given block.
Yeah, so looking at this as being something where we know at the end of 12 weeks, that's a long way away, essentially, if you look at like a training block to prepare for something that is going to have running in it. So if you're someone who is always constantly not running and you're always biking instead of running, let's try to like go 50-50, right? Or 30-70, where you're going to start adding in some of the running. Maybe you're not running every 200 or you're not running every 400, but you're running at least one of them. if that still is kind of a bothersome thing and you struggle with running in the class and you just don't feel good, then I would just challenge you to start walking more. And, we talked about it before, but starting out walking, 30 minutes a day, 20 to 30 minutes a day. If you can do it every day, great. But if you can do it 3 to 4 days, that's awesome too. And then if you can, add weight to that walk. So start walking with a weight vest or a rucksack. If you're really looking for a rucksack, I do believe GoRuck makes the best gear for this. I've now gotten to use their rucksack, and I was a big Alice Pack guy in the military, and man, it's like a Cadillac, man. It's just like, it's real nice. So if you guys are looking at it, they're a little more pricey, but I tell you what, it's the highest quality bag that I've ever owned. And even just anything that I've ever bought or had, it's the best quality made stuff, and it's made right in the US. So trying to get weighted walking in, and then if you do say like you're gonna do that for 4 weeks, you're gonna continually walk, and then after 4 weeks, start thinking about throwing in a little walk. So let's say it's 30-minute walk still. We're gonna walk 1 minute, we're gonna jog for 30 seconds. And you can do that for 30 minutes. And then slowly progress to where you're going 90 seconds on, 90 seconds a walk, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, and just progress that. And then that last 4 minutes or the last 4 weeks of that's where you're trying to jog, 3 to 4 minutes at a time and walk. You will be surprised that if you're doing that stuff regularly and you start out really pushing that walk and building that base by just doing it consistently every day, you will be able to run towards the end of this. So kind of keep that in mind, guys, that this is your chance to become a runner. You got it right here, 12 weeks. That's what I would try to do.
Yeah, I love it. And with the gymnastic stuff, guys, it's finding the scales that allow you to really, push yourself a little bit. And, everybody's going to be at a different spot with that. So that's where, scaling to where you need to be is what you need to do.
Yeah, on the gymnastics side of things, just think about what's really tangible here. If pull-ups are a struggle, it might be the time to check in with nutrition. We've seen a lot of people that have been members for a long time, and then they finally commit to doing some nutrition work, and then the body weight goes down, and you'd be amazing at how much easier a pull-up, push-up, everything is running with a little bit of weight loss. So if you guys need help with that though, Gretchen's taking on new clients. I'm taking on people as well. If you guys want to sit and meet and talk about, macros and how to do this, long-term, then we can do that. And we might do a whole episode too, just on like how to look at that. Weight loss does not have to be something that is super aggressively hard. It's something that's actually pretty simple, and trying to build something that works with your lifestyle is super important. And that is hard to do on your own, and that's why we're here. So keep that in mind. It might be a good time to do that if you're trying to get better at gymnastics. On the specific skills though, say you do have some pull-ups or you have no pull-ups, your goal is just to move forward to the next thing. So your goal should be in the next 12 weeks to get a pull-up. If you have some pull-ups, it should be able to hit, maybe like 20 to 50 in that workout of Murph, scaling it back. So kind of have some marks that you can kind of hit towards the end of this thing. Just kind of considering where you're at and just try to set like a really tangible goal with what you can hit with consistency.
Yeah, love it. It's all about, building that consistency, guys, and just committing to the plan. So, set the goal that's going to challenge you, and then just get after it.
All right, guys, that's all we have for this next phase. If you guys have any questions, you obviously can shoot them to us on Instagram or any of the social media channels, or just see us in class. I'd love to have some conversation with you guys. If you need a check-in and you guys want to sit down and talk about goals and where you're at and how training is going, how you can do better, or how you want to kind of shift your focus for your own personal, whatever you're personally working towards, I am available to sit down with you guys 5 days a week. Just let me know when. I'll work it out with my schedule and make sure that we can sit down and help you progress forward throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one.